About a minute out. Clarity. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. This is Two-Way Tonight. I hope to spend a lot of this hour in a celebration of the life of Charlie Kirk. Um, and but I have to deal with the reality of news. We all do. Coming up in just a moment is a briefing, we're told, from law enforcement in Utah. So when that happens, we'll take it live and we'll watch it together. I don't know how long it will be. I don't know what information they've had. Most of the reports up till now is that the gentleman who was widely shown as and identified as potential suspect was not the suspect, not a suspect, and that the killer is missing and that there's a manhunt going on. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Charlie. I'm going to show you a part of when Charlie was on Two-Way in April of 25. Have a couple of guests coming on as well, and we'll talk about Charlie and why he was such an extraordinary person. And then we want to hear a lot from you. There's a unique platform, an opportunity for you all. Some of you may have known Charlie, but I know a lot of you were fans of his or students of his in one way or another. So we'll have a mixture of watching this event in a moment, authorities briefing. Here's a still of Charlie, number 2, please, shortly before he was shot at this event. And there he is. When I talked to him yesterday on Next Up, he was really looking forward to the tour. He'd been in Asia for a few days, just 3 days at South Korea and to Tokyo. And hardest working person I knew was ready to go back on the road, something that has been so central, not just to his career in building a grassroots movement of young people supporting President Trump and conservatives, but he learned so much. He learned so much on the road. One of the things we talked about yesterday was going together to a Mandami rally. I don't know that Charlie was serious about it, but I was hoping to lure him up to New York to go because we both agreed it would be so interesting to see the people there, to see the young people whose political orientations were so different than his. I'm going to take the chance that this event isn't going to start. If it does, we'll cut out. But I want to play for you a little bit of my asking Charlie about his craft, how he was singular in this country's history, using technology the way he did to become part of a massive movement and a leader of a massive movement and such a close friend of the president, the vice president, so many people. I didn't know him particularly well. I was probably on his show a dozen times, and he was on my shows, I think 3 or 4 times. But I know what a great heart he had. So here's Charlie Kirk in a conversation on Two-Way. This is number 3, please, talking about how he did what he did.
I want to talk to you about what you've built. When people ask you what your occupation is, what do you say? Like, what's on your tax return?
Yeah, my tax return. That's a good question. I would best describe myself as an entrepreneur, which
Yeah.
So I thank you for all the kind words, Mark, and some of that is earned and some of it is not. So thank you. It's just at right place, right time, honestly. And I would agree with one of your things. I have probably been underestimated by a lot of people on the left and even on the right at times. And that's honestly been one of our greatest blessings, because we've been able to fly under the radar and float under the radar for a while. And like, hey, we're kind of doing this college campus thing. And I know you think that we don't have much of a following. And I know you think that all the kids are going to remain liberal for a while, but that's fine. We're just going to keep on building. But I, as an entrepreneur, I try to find problems and fix them. People try to put me in boxes, and that's fine. That's normal. Human beings tend to do that. But I definitely wear several hats. I do a 2-hour program every single day that you're nice enough to join quite frequently. Our audience loves you, by the way, Mark. It's phenomenal. which gets turned into a podcast. It's on hundreds of radio stations across the country. It's simulcast on multiple television stations as well.
And just to be clear, for some people, that would be a full-time job, 2-hour daily show with that level of distribution. So that's one thing you do. Incredible. Keep going.
Yeah, and then on my day job, as I joke around, is CEO of Turning Point USA and Turning Point Action and Turning Point PAC, but that one only really gets deployed in short-term election cycles. But really, Turning Point USA and Turning Point Action, which I started will be 13 years ago in June, and well over 1,000 full-time people on staff now, all across the country, working in several different departments, from our high school department, our college department, our faith department. We have Blexit, and we have Turning Point Academy. We have our entire Turning Point Action side that is divided from our grassroots team, our ballot chasing team. We have a whole student government project. We have I would say, a pretty sophisticated digital operation on top of all of that. So I have to raise money and manage all of that. We have a great team that manages it. I actually don't manage very well. I would say I set a good vision and I'm able to set the pace, but I've really good managers that are able to make sure those goals are actually delivered upon.
So
that is not a skill set.
And that's over 1,000 people, right?
Correct. That's
and how much money annually was coursing through those various things?
Over 100 million, so about 100 to 120 million a year.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, so, probably as much as you delegate, also a full-time job.
That is a full-time job to raise that, without a doubt. And look, we're super blessed and very fortunate. We have over 400,000 donors that now give to us, which is a real number that is up there in nonprofit world. So in either liberal or conservative nonprofit world, to not be a campaign and to be able to have more than 250,000 active donors, that's a big number. And so,
and how many of those are small? I'm sorry to interrupt, but how many of those are small dollar versus big?
Yeah. So obviously, look, we have plenty of wealthy people that give us money. Obviously, that's not, breaking news, but the average donation is right around $105, and that's averaging for all the donations that we get.
And what do your biggest donors give you? Millions?
Yes. I mean, I would say the biggest donor will probably give $1 million to $2 million a year, right around there. Yeah. And so again, like Foster Freeze, you covered him, I'm sure, Mark, for years. He was our original donor, and he used to give us, challenge grants. At one time, he gave us a big gift of $5 million if we could raise it, and we were really blessed by that. And that was kind of that seed funding that helped us get started. But that we did not get that gift until like 10 years in, just to give perspective, 8 to 10 years in. So, but no, we have a small dollar grassroots army that is also a backbone of a lot of what we do, and that doesn't always get into the coverage of us because there is a caricature that we're just kind of small, clubby, billionaire funded. And again, full disclosure, of course, we raise money from all people. You have to in this space, but we also have a lot of grassroots energy. And so on top of that, I also create a lot of content. And I speak. Yesterday I did 5.5 hours of speaking on campus at Texas A&M University, on top of doing the show and on top of raising money. And so we post those videos online, and the last couple years, they've really gone super viral and making a big difference with young folks. So I try to keep myself busy.
To be his age, young man, have the success he had at the highest levels of American politics, media, activism, to have the servant's heart he died with, to be so humble. And often when I was on his show, I would compliment him because I was so impressed by what he'd accomplished. And he'd always feign modesty and be genuinely modest because he was so in awe of what he'd already accomplished, so humbled by it. He loved two-way. I have to tell you, for those who are proud to be part of this community, loved it. And I'd go on his show, in part because he loved two-way, and he would talk about watching two-way. And he loved it for all the reasons I love it. Loved hearing voices from all over America. Loved how this was new and open, and anyone can come on and raise their hand and talk. And from questions and comments, he learned so much. And he would always praise, whenever I talked to him, texted with him, always praise this. I wish we'd had him on more. He's a hard guy to book. Was a hard guy to book. Here's Charlie talking to a member of the community. This is number 5, please.
Start with Nilda. Go ahead, please.
Hi. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I've been following Charlie for a long time. Very excited, very happy to be in this chat with you. Here from California, asking.
How are you?
I am happy to be chatting with you. Very excited. I remember the election night of 2020. I was sobbing on my couch with you on TV, watching what was happening, and here we are. And now after Hilton trying to come out for governor here in California, what can we do here for our beautiful state? Charlie, you know how to.
Well, thank you. God bless you.
Great question. And just to frame it a little bit, California used to elect Republican governors, and except for Schwarzenegger, who was a bit of an anomaly, it's been a while. So do you think much about how to build a Republican Party in California, and what are the elements of that?
I think that it can be done in the next 10 years. And I know people might laugh, but listen, first of all, that's why I endorse Steve Hilton. I think that the chance of him winning this cycle might not be the best odds, but getting closer and closer to that is incredibly important. But if Hispanics, and especially Hispanic men, keep on moving in the direction that they have been moving nationally, California can be in play. I know over a long period of time, it requires voter registration, it requires no more demoralization. And finally, if young people continue to move in the broad way that we've seen, and California even minorly follows that trend, we could probably see some more a more competitive landscape in California. So I endorse Steve Hilton, and I wish him the best of luck and success.
All right, Nija, thank you. Nola, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it.
I know we're in a breaking news situation, but I've been really struck by how cable news is not really showing very much of Charlie. And so I thought amongst the things we should do is to hear him. No, he was a singular person, and I want the country to come together around this, and that's always said in tragedy, but I've just heard so much negativity already. And I'm committed to doing what I can on all my platforms to try to use this as an opportunity to bring the country together. I don't know, how you all break down. Some of you probably close students and fans. Maybe your kids were big fans, and one thing should be commented on more. But so many people, including Gavin Newsom, had kids who knew Charlie, liked Charlie, followed him. Even if they weren't necessarily conservative, he just was a visible, known personage for younger people who had no other connection necessary to politics. Some of you may only be hazily familiar with what he did and who he was. And I feel so bad for his family, of course, and for his friends. But I feel so bad for the country to lose truly one of the most exceptional leaders we had. And I hope that people on the left who don't like what he stood for and can go on ChatGPT or Google and create a list of things that he said that were incendiary. I hope you can appreciate the loss that so many are feeling, including, again, the president and the vice president. The president is not someone necessarily who expresses a lot of feelings, openly. And that's true of a lot of people in this administration. They genuinely love Charlie, genuinely. And the memorials that would be built to him, and the programs that will be set up, and the funeral speeches, they'll all be a reflection of how important he was to them personally as well as politically. But there's no way to actually grieve for him appropriately under the circumstances anytime soon. But all I'm asking is for all of you to, those of you on the right, to not use this as an opportunity to destroy the left. That's all I'm asking, really. It's not the right thing to do for his memory. Here's what we're going to do. We've got a couple guests coming. I want to hear from you all. So I'll bring a couple people in, ask people to be relatively short just because there's so many hands up. And this is, the only place to have a conversation like this. We'll wait for this press conference to begin by law enforcement, and we'll go to that immediately when it begins because we've gotten so little information about what actually happened. And we'll bring our guests in, and we'll just spend the time together. And I want this as much as possible to be a celebration of his life rather than political vitriol. So our guests in just a moment, but let's get a couple people in first and start with Matt. Matt, welcome in.
Hey, good afternoon on what is just a really, really awful day. I was kind of thinking about, we've had the Gabby Gifford shootings and the assassination of the Minnesota legislators, and then you have all the stuff that's come from the other direction more recently, going back to the congressional baseball practice and Brian Thompson, two shots at Trump, and now Charlie today. And I guess, what I was struck by a little bit is just, the history of socialism and Marxism is about not really about debate or understanding of opposing viewpoints, but about eliminating those viewpoints. And I guess what happened to Charlie today feels a bit like a tipping point to me because he spoke freely, he encouraged debate on the college campuses and mobilized college youth and young adults in a way that just hasn't happened for a long time. And now he's dead as a result. And, can we go back from this? Because this one, more than any of the other assassination attempts or assassinations, really does feel like potentially a breaking point if a lot of the youth out there really does take their anger about what's happened here and goes in the wrong direction with it.
Yeah, it's a really very well said, Matt. Thank you. I'm gonna uh bring in our guests because I'm not as well equipped to answer these questions under my current state as I'd like to be. So Matt Gorman's here. Matt, grateful to you for making time. I know you're in the midst of it. So if you could respond to what your fellow Matt said, and then also share either before or after that, just share your overall thoughts about what's happened to Charlie.
Yeah, no, it's a terrible day. At least at the moment, I guess I'm not kind of in the place to kind of go down the back and forth rabbit hole. Um, but the thing about I'll speak kind of a little bit more on Charlie. He was somebody who I think has a couple different legacies. Obviously, he was somebody who has influential voice, and I think that term's going to get overused in some respects about people, but he truly was an influential voice in the party, and just I would say since 2016. I mean, social media, podcasts, like his reach was extremely broad, especially among young voters, as we all know. And he really believed in, I think, in a lot of the same things that we all believe in here as part of the two-way community, right? Free exchange of ideas, dialogue, civil debate, not screaming people down, not, demeaning people because they might disagree with you. And I think one of the other more tactical things of the legacy is, it really can't be overstated his effect on the Trump victory last year. Obviously, victory has a thousand fathers, but really, with the new law that came into effect from the last couple of years that allowed outside groups to coordinate with campaigns, he turning points, got the vote efforts, especially in Arizona, especially in Wisconsin, were massive. And the man was 31 years old. And I'll say one other thing too. I think in an era where, you know, having a family and having kids and relishing a family life isn't as much of a priority as it could be. He was an outspoken advocate, especially among young people, for that life and the rewards of that life. And I think those are the three things that really come to mind right now. And I think of Charlie Kirk and what he stood for.
Yeah, Matt, pick up on two things and then bring Hyma in. I talked to him yesterday about home ownership and how young men were more interested in starting families now because they were eager to have all that represented. And he was so focused on it, and because he's such a brain, the interdisciplinary understanding of the economics of it, the sociology, the psychology, the politics. Matt, because this is your field. I really don't think Trump would necessarily won without Charlie's ground game in those states. And I was a skeptic because turnout and voter reg are not for amateurs. And his organization had never done it. So talk about how skeptical political pros were when Charlie said, I'm going to raise millions of dollars and I'm going to do voter turnout and voter registration.
He spent over $100 million. And I will tell you that campaigns are littered with people who make a lot of BS promises about voter turnout and this app that can revolutionize, or this trick that they fail miserably, right? Charlie succeeded immeasurably. And you're exactly right. It was something that took a lot of work. And I tell you right now, too, he with a demographic that extremely hard. It wasn't doing it with, you know, old boomers that were going to show up at the polls regardless. He did it with college kids. He galvanized college kids on campus. Look, being a conservative is cool in a way it hasn't been, I would say, since Bush won his reelection in 2004. And, you know, college, and that, I mean, what I mean on college campuses. And a lot of that has to do with Charlie Kirk in a way. And I think you're also right on home ownership. Um, that's an issue that's going to bubble up in the midterms, and he understood it. And he understood kind of what it meant as a person to own a home. And traditional sounds negative, but it's he understood that I think men value the importance of having a family, and there was an audience there that he could speak to in that regard.
Yeah. Hyma, welcome in. So happy to have you back and eager to hear you on whatever you'd like to say. But one thing I do want to hear from you on is, you know how hard it is for both political parties, anyone with political story to tell, to get young people engaged. And I don't think there's been anyone in the last 5 years with Charlie's level of success. So I'd like talk about whatever you wish, but I'd love you to address how extraordinary that achievement was to get young people to come to rallies, to turn out to vote, etc.
Hey, Mark, good to see you, and Matt, good to be on with you. And I'm happy that you guys are having this conversation in such a thoughtful way. And so thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. And I think regardless of your or my friends' political beliefs or leaning, this is very sad. And when you talk about and think about this, Mark, I'm thinking about when I worked for on presidential campaigns, worked on at the DNC, other, political rallies and events. My mom would always text and she's like, all right, be safe, And so this is a mother's and a father's like worst nightmare. You send your young kid out to do good work and to do the things that you think, that their heart desire, and you don't expect for them to get shot doing it. You don't expect for them to get killed doing it. And so first and foremost, this is just egregious and it's disgusting. And no one, and any person who, regardless if you're a Democrat or independent or a Republican, any person who is saying this is okay because he was who he was is disgusting as well. So that's first and foremost. And I'm just sick of hearing it. I'm sick of seeing it. But to your point, and I think the fact that we're having this conversation, and you guys know, I probably was almost never on the same side as Charlie over the years. But you said it, Mark, and Matt said it. This is a young man who was able to galvanize, regardless of political party, galvanize young people in a way that we have not seen in so long. And it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you have to give kudos to that. And I think and President Trump, sort of said this in his True Social post about being legendary. And I think you can disagree with Charlie and the whole movement all you want, but the things that he's been able to do, in T1, and particularly bringing Trump back in the second term, are things that people are going to look at as a model for organizing, a model for registering voters, and a model for inspiring people. He was able to take sort of that internet Twitter bro sort of culture and make it a real thing and get these people to vote and get them out and get them to care about and be a part of their society. So that's sort of the first thing.
Brilliant.
And then the last thing, Mark, and I think you guys are right. So I think what we need to what we're gonna look at, Democrats, Republicans, everybody, is how do you continue to do that? Young people saw something in within him that they had not seen in any politician, in any elected official. And so how do we keep galvanizing that? It's not about, look, I'm probably going to ask them to vote for someone who's not President Trump, but fine. But how do we galvanize that energy, and how do we use Charlie's legacy to build on that, to keep young people involved in politics? Because you guys know this, like, we're all going to age out of this, at some point. The people that we're bringing up, Charlie was speaking directly to them. We got to make sure that they stay organized, engaged, involved in things like this. And so I give kudos to Charlie and to his family and to the whole movement while we mourn his death.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm so glad to hear you say that. I love your tone, so thank you. So, gentlemen, I'm not speaking specifically about the two of you, so don't take it personally. I've covered hundreds of political operatives in my career, and some of them are pure mercenaries. They might have a DR and R, but they're really just in it for the money or the power or the interest. And the best ones care a lot about the country, and they believe their party's right, and they're involved for that reason. And you think of the Hall of Fame of political strategists in my career. So go back to Bush one, Lee Atwater, James Carville, Karl Rove, Michael Hooley. There's others, but Jen O'Malley Dillon I'd put in that category. Just legendary figures, okay? And the best ones were multidisciplinary, right? They could do more than one thing. Karl Rove started out writing direct mail, but he can write a speech, he can read a poll, he design a poll, he can do fundraising, right? Charlie, I say, because again, I want to be honoring him here. In some ways, greatest of all time is simply because he was in a digital age, and did so many things as you heard in my interview with him. But I really do think his greatness was because he was brilliant and he understood the mechanics of all this. But to go back to the first point I made, he was in this for love of country and a belief that the conservative movement had to be ascended to change the country in the way he thought it needed to be changed. And second to no one in both understanding the mechanics, the tactics, the machinery, the technology of politics. Second to no one I knew, but also second to no one in being in it for the right reasons. Okay, that guy was so beloved, and you'll hear, for those of you who don't know, his relationship with the president, the vice president, Don Jr. So beloved because he was such a nice guy and so sophisticated about playing politics, right? Within Trump world, there are factions, right? And they're remarkably cohesive under the circumstances, but there are factions, and everyone liked Charlie. Everyone liked Charlie. I don't know anyone who didn't like him. And it happened somewhat organically because he was such a lovely person. But he worked at it because he understood the importance of it, not just in order to maintain his place in the hierarchy, but because he had such a great heart. He cared so much about what other people thought. And again, I didn't know him that well, but he was so gracious to me, coming on Two-Way, coming on Next Up, having me on his program, texting with me. I know plenty of nice, gracious people. I don't want to say he's a singular saint, but to be his age, early 30s, married, kids, family, you heard running $100 million organization, doing public facing stuff, dealing nonstop with the president and the vice president and other people. He was a singular person and so impressive. And I will say again, his memory should be celebrated by having the country come together. And I can't tell you what my inbox and my Twitter feed look like. And let's find out, who did this. Here's the investigators. Let's go, please, right now to Fox.
Vice President Val Peterson, who's been in touch with President Jimenez, and then we'll hear from Governor Cox. I'll turn the time over to Commissioner Mason.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bo Mason, Commissioner for the Utah Department of Public Safety. Today at approximately 12:20 Mountain Standard Time, political influencer Charlie Kirk was shot in an event at the Utah Valley University. He was taken by private vehicle to Timpanogos Hospital, where he later passed. The Utah Department of Public Safety will be co-leading this criminal investigation to find this killer, along with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We're working in unison with the County Sheriff's Office, the local police department, and the University Police Department, all of which have been very cooperative and fully engaged in this process. Shortly after the shooting, we did have a suspect in custody, George Zinn, but he was released from custody after we identified that he did not match the shooting suspect and was not an accurate person of interest. However, he has been booked into the county jail by Utah Valley University Police Department for obstruction of justice. We do still have an active investigation for the person of interest. This incident occurred with a large crowd around. There was one shot fired and one victim. While the suspect is at large, we believe this was a targeted attack towards one individual. This is a tragic moment in our state and in our country. As we heal, we encourage everyone who is struggling with news of the incident to call 988, our state mental health crisis line. In addition to that, our partners with the FBI will also be discussing other ways we can communicate through the public for tips and other information. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the FBI, we extend our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of Charlie Kirk. Our thoughts are also with the people who witnessed this traumatic event. We know that what you experienced was very difficult. Our thoughts are with you as well. As soon as we heard about the shooting, special agents and personnel from the Salt Lake field office responded immediately. We have full resources devoted to this investigation, including tactical, operational, investigative, and intelligence. To be clear, the FBI will fully support and co-lead this investigation alongside with our partners. We are working on setting up a digital media tip line, and as soon as it's established, we'll get that information out to everyone. I know there's a lot of questions. This is very much an active case, and this investigation is in its early stages. We are following all the leads and all the evidence. If anyone has any information, please report it to the FBI or local law enforcement. Thank you.
On behalf of President Jimenez, who we've been communicating with, and she's on her way back right now.
Okay, step back for a moment. The FBI official there, unaware that as he was speaking, the head of the FBI says the suspect is in custody. So we'll see what we learn more about that. So we'll keep monitoring this. Go ahead and leave it up, but leave the audio down. I so many hands up, and I really want to have a conversation here. So Hyma and Matt still here. Doug, come on in and say what you wish about Charlie. And I'd ask everybody, so many hands up. I'd like people to be relatively brief and whether you have a question or comment, and we'll move through folks. Go ahead, Doug.
Thanks for taking me. I wanted to ask a question of these guys. Has Charlie, you're saying he's such a nice guy. Has he been excoriated by the left media, or is he, are they recognizing him for the, for the person?
Since the shooting or historically?
Historically, and then since the shooting.
Historically, yes, he'd be demonized in the same category as Tucker or anybody else. And he said inflammatory things. I had a conversation with him yesterday in which he said some inflammatory things. There were some really unfortunate things said on MSNBC this afternoon. I doubt they'll say them again. And I don't want this story to be about the right trying to destroy the left by citing things that were said live on TV on MSNBC. But I would say Charlie, because he was so nice and he went on Gavin Newsom's show, etc., he was not in the category of Tucker. I just said he was. I mean, he there was less vitriol, but there were certainly focus on the things he said that were incendiary.
Thanks.
Hyma, thoughts?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think I said this earlier in my remarks. I think today, even before we knew that he had died, I think I saw some things that were just unsavory, and I do not agree with. But and I think you said it, Mark. In the past, I mean, there were moments where Charlie was extremely inflammatory on some things, and I think some of that was intentional because he was trying to draw attention to some of these issues, particularly conservative issues. And secondly, and maybe Matt can talk about this, he was, and we can't deny it, he was just very skilled at debating and also very skilled at baiting the left into conversations like this. And so I think today I've seen some things I don't agree with. It's not good. But to answer your point, to be quite honest and quite frank with you, I do not think you're going to see left activists and those in the Democratic Party exalting him. You're not going to see that. And I think the best you'll see is, I think people are going to keep their head down and try not to say horrible things because that's disgusting. But I don't think you're going to see where he's not going to bring people together. His death won't bring people together in that way, I don't suspect. But I do think people will be more respectful now.
I'm hoping to bring the country together. It's my aspiration, but I understand why you're skeptical. Doug, Thank you. Grateful to you. Matt, thoughts on Doug's question?
Yeah, no. I will say this, even the left, I think, recognizes his influence in a very real way. As you mentioned it before, right? He went on Gavin Newsom's podcast. Gavin knew the reach that he had. And I think also you're right. He would believe very fervently in debate, right? Was willing to go onto these college campuses, engage with people. And again, I think you're right. It's different than Tucker. It's different than all the kind of. He occupies a unique space on the right because he was willing to kind of go into these scenarios, like I said before, not call people names, demean them, but really engage in debate. And I think that was very unique.
Yeah, Carly, welcome in. Unmute. Tell us what's on your mind about Charlie, please.
Hi. I have a college student. He goes to a very liberal school. And he often listened to him and saw his videos. And he learned a lot from him about how to be a good man, how to properly date girls, how to, prepare to be a good husband, a good father, a good family man. And when he talked to the kids, he was always asking them if they had problems. I know there were a lot of issues concerning trans and all that jazz, but it was if you have problems, seek help. So we had a very positive messages for students. And even though, as I said, in a very liberal school, they realized that he was a very good man.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. And he worked so hard at that in that organization. Some of their work related to issues like that got overshadowed in the political media by the coverage of his involvement in politics. But he did so much in those realms.
Thank you, Mark, for what you're doing. Thank you so much.
Carly,
I really appreciate it.
Carly, thank you. Matt, thank you for being with us. I know you got to go. We'll have you back soon. I want to play for you a conversation I had with Charlie yesterday on the economic struggles of young people. And you'll see how thoughtful he is about issues that everyone should be concerned about, left, right, center. Here it is. This is number 7, please. This is from Next Up, recorded yesterday. And there's this new NBC poll that shows young men generally more favorably disposed towards Donald Trump and his policies than young women. And I want to talk about kind of the intersection of those two. How are you feeling about the economy, and what are you hearing from the young people you talk to about how they're feeling about it?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I mean, our campus tour is about to kick off in a couple days, so I'll have a better answer for you in the coming weeks. I mean, look, the president knows this, that he still has a lot of work to do with young people. I think that we're in a much better spot than we were a year ago. I could tell you, Mark, undoubtedly, talking to CEOs, businessmen, investors, and even international folks, the psychology of the American economy is far better. And so much of what happens in business is just psychology. Do you think we're doing better? Do you think that this is a better pro-business environment? I actually haven't had a chance to dive into those economic numbers. I was, as you know, traveling, so I'm going to have to do that. I was told that they weren't as good as they could have been, but I'm not going to be able to comment on that. I will say, though, that there are a couple fundamental problems that I know the president wants to solve, and I think he has to solve. Homeownership for young people is number one, cost of living, and then also just restoring this idea of the American way of life, which is fundamentally meritocratic, which is that if I work hard and play by the rules, I can materially and financially and socially ascend in this country. What we are seeing happen is more and more political and economic nihilism. I think we're going to be able to cut that off at the pass, but it is a race against the clock. And I've said this publicly, is that you have kind of two competing economic visions, of which I think the Democrat Party, they're going to stumble upon themselves, but they're eventually going to end up in this mold. And you and I have talked about this before on my podcast, Mark, which is you have MAGA, pretty clear what we believe, right? We believe in America First agenda, but we're generally, fair. We believe in markets with proper restraints, and we like entrepreneurship, private property rights. The other side, you have Mamdani, and you have this idea of mass economic restructuring, kind of bitter resentment, and he is kind of a, more polished version on a city level of confiscatory economic policy. It's very alluring. It's very attractive, especially to a generation that owns nothing, that is renting endlessly. And so all this to say, Mark, that there's going to be kind of a fork in the road politically and philosophically over the next couple of years. So I'll have a better idea of where young people are feeling in the next couple of days, the next couple of weeks. But there's definitely more work to do. But I think the president's successes so far have been notable. We are seeing housing prices go down finally in the Sun Belt. That data came out the last couple of days. We're starting to see housing go down a little bit. But the biggest thing is going to be, can we Can we grow the economy for young people in particular, not just for late Gen Xers and baby boomers? So I have a lot more to say on that. As you know, I've been pretty non-political on this, saying that this is an issue that transcends political lines and it's of civilizational import.
Okay.
Should young people look to Washington, to look to the
watch-
Trump administration
you
to help the
watch
economy?
full interview. Emma Jem Morris, my two-way colleague, is here, who has pretty deep and rich understanding of not just of Charlie, but of his place in the world. Emma, thank you for joining. Love for you to just tell folks anything you want about understanding what kind of person he was.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and having me on to talk. I'm just shocked, utterly shocked. I just can't even process it. It's hard to process it. You know, Charlie has such an incredible legacy, and I have such beautiful experiences with him personally. And everybody, you know, I'm in the MAGA space. MAGA media is like my life and has been since the first day I started working. And before, and especially before, you know, Charlie meant so much to people like around my age and younger. It's so incredibly isolating and lonely being a conservative on campus in most universities. I mean, save like Hillsdale, and that's probably about it. There's something that is so sometimes degrading about it when you feel like you have to say things that you don't believe and that aren't true to you because you think you have to appease your friends or your professors or get a grade or just give lip service to whatever to have friends. And Charlie is one of those people, there's just a few who are so magnetic and so charismatic and talented and smart that he would create these communities for conservatives on campus and like venture into these hostile environments and take on people who he didn't agree with and give swag to being a conservative and deliver ideas so nicely and so eloquently and convincingly. And he really created this sense of community and comfort about being a conservative on campus, which is like, it can't be overstated how much that means to you when you're trying to figure out what you're about and you're trying to figure out how to talk and how to express yourself in a way that you're still maybe feeling out or that you feel uncomfortable about in public. And he was one of those like lights for you in that situation. So, you know, he had that impact on me and he had that impact on probably millions of students. And I think that that's worth mentioning first and foremost. His public persona was just, and his public presence was just so important and so critical for the movement and keeping the movement alive and helping people realize, you know, maybe what they think. But, you know, in any event, I started telling some stories about my experiences personally with Charlie in the last show, and I was having connection issues. I'm sorry. But I wanted to tell those stories because I think that they're worth sharing to not only honor Charlie and my memory of him personally, but share what kind of person Charlie was, you know, in private. And so, you know, I have two things that stick out to me in my time working with him on various things. The first one I started talking about on the last show, where I was invited to speak at a conference for women, young female leaders or whatever. It was in Dallas a couple of years ago when I was at Breitbart. And it was about being a conservative in a liberal city. I'll retell the beginning of the story to catch anyone up who missed it. It was about being a conservative in a liberal city. That was the panel, and it was me, Libby Emmons, and Carol Markowitz, and we started talking about something about faith and finding, you know, a house of faith that resonates with your values when there isn't a big community who is conservative in your neighborhood. And I said something about being at a synagogue because that is my faith, Judaism, and afterwards, there were some people who didn't like that I brought up my Judaism and brought up going to synagogue. And there were some people who I guess disagreed or felt like, I guess, that there was Judaism being promoted at the conference and whatever. I don't know. But Charlie just stood up for me completely and immediately and was like, basically like, we welcome everyone, and why shouldn't she express her faith on stage publicly? Like, why wouldn't she do that? And he just totally had my back when he could have not. You know, I mean, these are people who were paying. I wasn't paying, and that was just who he was. Like, he was a believer in true diversity, actually, like true diversity, where you have people of different faiths and religions and beliefs and political ideologies, people who are maybe misguided, maybe people who know what they're talking about and he just disagrees with them or whatever. And he always had you and always wanted you to feel free and safe to talk as you wish. And that leads to the next story, which was again while I was at Breitbart.
Emma, I'm sorry, just before you do, I just want to update
Please.
people on the briefing. The briefing has ended. Again, it was the governor of Utah, local and federal law enforcement, and a lot of questions about the shooter. They suggested the shot came from a roof. There were questions about the security protocols at the event, and certainly that will be much discussed. They were relatively defensive about that, and there were questions about the suspect that they would not answer. The governor of Utah called Charlie's death a political assassination. So obviously still a lot of questions, including who the person of interest in custody is. Emma, please continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So it's just so terrible. Yeah, but no, the second story I had, I mean, I don't want to bore you guys with my personal stories, like, but just one more quick one was I wrote this column at Breitbart that I don't know if the whole audience really keeps up with right-wing media, but this is kind of deep cuts. There's big movement on the right for school choice, and that is something that, especially among donors, is very much supported on the right. And I was skeptical of it, and I basically wrote a whole long column on Breitbart, kind of picking apart school choice in that position. And it was controversial, even at Breitbart. Alex Marlowe, who's my boss, he was like, "Are you sure you want to take this position? Like, this isn't, I don't know, and I just insisted, no, I want to publish it. I think it's important to have this debate. It's kind of a settled science issue on the right that I don't feel comfortable with. And I think we should still continue to argue about it and hash it out." So he publishes it. And Charlie was the first and only person, if I recall correctly, who wanted to have me on. And Charlie's donors, surely many of them would be huge proponents of school choice. And Charlie just insisted that this was like such a strange column to see in conservative media. And he just insisted on having me on to talk about it on his podcast and let me have a platform to express something that would have been very unorthodox for right-wing commentators. And he was just, again, like, no, like, come and express a view that I don't necessarily agree with or don't necessarily have myself. And that was just who he was. And there's just such a dark and sick irony in that he was the victim of this when he was the person who was like the first person to welcome dissenting views, to entertain people he didn't agree with, and to hope that everybody had a platform to express themselves peacefully, and to persuade as opposed to force. And it's just such a tremendous loss. It's such an unimaginable loss. And he has two little kids.
Yeah.
I hope that if anybody has kids, that they really give them a big hug and a kiss, because God, life is so fleeting.
Yeah. Carson,
Wes.
welcome and tell folks. Thank you, Emma, so much. Carson, welcome and tell folks what's on your mind about Charlie Kirk.
Thanks. I'm kind of disturbed about it. I actually really appreciate being able to bring it up with the group here. I just wanted to say it was really nice to see someone who is willing to take speech to the world. And it kind of worries me when we're somehow correlating speech with violence. And if someone feels that they need to take violence as an action because of speech, we have a real problem we need to reflect on. And so I don't have any more insights, but I thought he did a good job of bringing speech and awareness to everyone.
Yeah. Hyma, thank you, Carson. Hyma, your party has tussled with the right on the issue of speech, particularly on campuses, where, of course, this is where Charlie was today. What would you say the right way forward in unity is towards this notion of free speech, particularly on campus?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, look, I've been reading the comments, and I think we have to. Things have got. Look, I just got a text, and someone sent me a text of a list. There was a plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer a few years ago. There was pipe bombs at the RNC at the DNC. Nancy Pelosi house got broken into. Donald Trump had multiple assassination attempts. The House Speaker in Minnesota was killed, and her husband. Luigi killed the head of United Healthcare in New York, and then we have this. And so all of the crap that we're talking about going back and forth, Dems are bad and dark, and the right is blah 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 blah. That's not helpful, and that's crazy, and that's silly. And so I think what we have to do is we have to see this and we have to stop it. We can't have this conversation where we are every time something like this happens, we're going to be against each other and we're going to say, oh, it's the Democrats or it's the look, the Democrats is a big old party with a lot of people. The Republican Party is a big party with a lot of people. The MAGA movement is a big movement with a lot of people. And you can't blame one instance on an entire group of people. And that's what's creating this. And so I think freedom of speech is something that we should all hold very, very dear. And I think, look, I'll say this. I am a Democrat. I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in safety. I believe in protection. I believe in free markets. And I think so when we think about Democrats and we think about, what's happening right now, we've got to make sure that we don't just cast aspersions on Democrats because of something like this, because there's been things on both sides over the last couple of years that have been really, really hard. So one of the things that Charlie said in the segment with you, Mark, that I think was so salient, there is going to be a huge conversation about philosophical differences with the parties, with the movements. I would venture to say that the MAGA movement is not the Republican Party. It's different. And so I think there's going to be, over the next couple of years, as we get into the midterm elections next year, as we get into 2028, we're going to have a really hard conversation about what kind of country we want to be. What do we want to make sure that the next generation has? To Charlie's point, I agree that home ownership should be something that we should invest in, but that's something we should invest in across the board. We should go from Atlanta, to rural Idaho, making sure that people have access to home ownership. And so if we can find, to Mark's point, if we can find moments like this to agree to get our country a little bit further or closer to making the American dream more accessible to more people, I think that will honor Charlie's legacy, not pointing fingers at Democrats.
I'm so grateful to you, not just for what you said, but how you said it. Beautiful and so apt for the tone that we need to have here and in the country. So thank you. Carson, thank you. Welcome in Lance. Lance, thanks for joining on Your Mind About Charlie.
Well, a lot of people depended on him, and they feel like they depended on him. You had the stories from the mother before. And I think this was the ultimate act of hatred towards young people, particularly young men, because, he stood for merit. He stood for restoring the American dream. And there's really probably no one else in America that was as young as he was that stood for that. And when you go to a lot of colleges and universities, young people are afraid to talk about politics on both the left and the right. It's there. So, and I think that whoever did this, I'm not going to go into this, but obviously this was a lone person, but where I'm going with this is essentially somebody should not have to die for us to get somewhere and in this country. And we're probably, whatever his goals or intentions was, in the eyes of a lot of people, he has signed them up for indentured servitude and slavery. He is, he was in favor of economic fairness. He was open to the American dream. And there's not a lot of politicians out there that realize that.
Lance, thank you. Really nice, really lovely. Thank you. Emma, and then Hyma comment on what Lance said, and then we'll bring someone else in here.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's not, he was going into places where it was like totally actively hostile all the time. And he was giving people the strength and ideas and courage to really just be themselves and to speak honestly and articulate themselves as best they could, which is such a gift for a college student, and especially when they don't feel like they have that right. And he reminded them, no, you are an American and you have the right to say whatever you want and think whatever you want. And I absolutely agree. The people hardest hit, aside from obviously his family, are all the young students who are going to lose that advocate. It's not fair. Such a senseless thing, and robbing our country.
Yeah, Hyma.
Yeah. Look, I think what young people who have followed Charlie are going to do is they're going to find a reason and they're going to find motivation in what they knew and heard from Charlie. And so I think, look, and I stress this, I am a Democrat. I'm going to vote for Democrats. I'm going to support Democrats. I'm going to ask you guys to do that. But I think if you're someone who were inspired by Charlie Kirk, particularly if you're young, this is not a moment where you give up and you walk away from the arena. This is a moment that you should literally step up and be as politically involved as you want to be, as you can be. And I'm not saying you go and you like get on Twitter and you just go and say hateful things. This is a moment, and Emma, you talked about this, when there are moments when people, like Emma and your friends are having moments where they feel like they're being discriminated against, you can stand up for them. You do that. If you can register more voters, you do that. If you can, raise more money for a particular candidate, do that. So those are sort of things you got to do. One thing about the college campuses, and I went to college in Atlanta, and I think some of this is new. I think some of the conservative college hate is new. When I was in college 20 years ago, I went to college in Georgia, a fairly conservative state. And the Republicans have been off campus for a while. And Shermichael Singleton, some of you guys may know him, he's on CNN and Fox all the time. Shermichael restarted the college Republicans on our college campus. And Herman Cain at the time was running, and Herman Cain came and he helped them bring that chapter back. And the rest of the campus was so supportive of having those conservative. I went to an all-male historically Black college. Most of the people on campus were so thrilled that there was an outlet for the conservative voices on our campus at that time. And so I think this is a new thing that we've got to make sure that we give people space to become who they are, And so I don't think this is a moment where we go and we shut down schools because we think that they are overly liberal or, whatever, shake them down. No. We ask schools to expand their spectrum. We ask schools to, if they don't have Republican clubs or whatever, get a Republican club, give people a safe space, but also do that for liberals. And even for my party, and Mark knows this, the spectrum of Democrats is so wide, you guys. I know we're spending so much time talking about Mandani in New York, and I'm not a New York voter, so I don't have to really talk about it that much. But the spectrum of Democrats is so wide. And so if you're conservative, you're MAGA, as you are thinking about this and thinking about Charlie, thinking about politics, I don't want you to put all Democrats in one bucket. It's a big spectrum from super liberal to blue dog conservatives. And you guys saw me last week. I'm from Louisiana. I had a blue dog behind me last time I was here. I'm from Louisiana. And a lot of Democrats, they take offense to being called a super liberal because, think about my parents and my mom, most of how she lives life is rooted in her religion. That's just how it is. But she's a Democrat, And so I think if we can give all each other sort of the space to become who we are and to talk about our feelings in a way that's going to be respectful, then I think we can all win. And so I say all that to say that Emma, if you keep doing what you're doing, and people like you are going to inspire those who are following Charlie to keep going. This is not a moment to give up. We say this even when the speaker was assassinated in Minnesota. This is not a moment to give up. This is a moment to step up and step in and to continue the work that you're doing on behalf of the country.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to you for everything you just said, and so feel so blessed to have had you on tonight. And Emma, thank you for sharing what you did about Charlie, and thanks to Matt and to all of you participated. I hope that President Obama, President Clinton go to Charlie's funeral. I hope they're welcome there by all of you. And I hope that he's celebrated as he should be, even if you disagreed with his politics, even if you didn't like everything he said. This was a kind man. My heart so breaks for his two babies, for those two kids. And we'll be back at 9 tomorrow, Sean, Dan, and I, and we'll talk a lot about Charlie. And of course, the investigation, the question of who did this horrible thing, this assassination, will be much on everybody's mind. And we'll be back tomorrow night, and I'll talk about this quite a bit tomorrow on Next Up. We were going to do a debate between two California gubernatorial candidates, but I'll be talking about Charlie and about this moment, and we're going to show a lot of my interviews with Charlie. I'm very proud of them. And his folks said Charlie loved doing them because I asked him different questions than he normally got, and just so grateful to him for making time, and I'll miss being on his program with him, and honored how often he asked me to be on. So thank you all for being part of it again. Thanks so much to Hyma and to Matt and to Emma Jo, and I'll see you at 9 a.m. with Sean and Dan. Have a good evening, everybody.